Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Can't Deposit Excuses podcast. I'm your host, Derek Wiley. For those that are listening to the podcast, I'd like to invite you to listen to us on all the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Amazon. We're available there. If you're watching the podcast on YouTube, please, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and subscribing, it really does help the channel, and we really hope that you enjoy this episode. So this week I wanted to talk about something that was brought up a lot in some of the very early podcast episodes. We're now about a year into the podcast, and some of the very first episodes that were filmed involved guests, and we asked them about their why. And we asked them, about books they may have read that resonated with them. And we really tried to get at the heart of what it means to, not let things hold you back and realize that excuses are something that we all have, and that, we have to put those aside if we want to find some success. I want to talk a little bit about why this podcast started and what all of those early conversations were born out of. In 2020, obviously we had a rough year with the pandemic.
I worry about diseases, so I have trouble touching things. As long as I'm in my apartment, I'm okay.
And during that time, I had some free time to kind of explore, to talk with colleagues, to talk with friends, to talk with business associates. And I had a couple of guys that I know that are in a group with me that turned me on to a book, and we all agreed to read it together. So I'm going to give a shout out to Brian Rotenberry, Josh Worley, and Thomas Gibson. We all read this book, but it changed my life. And so I want to talk a little bit about that book today, and then talk about how it might benefit you to not only read this book, but also take some of the actions and implement them in your own lives.
Mashed potatoes and gravy, Marie.
Why is this book so important? And before I go any further, let's just introduce the book. It's the 12-week year. Get more done in 12 weeks than others do in 12 months. So that's a pretty cool idea. And how does it work in real life? Brian Moran and Michael Lennington are your authors on this book. But how does it work in real life? How did it work in practice? Well, a lot of people talk about great books they read and they got this idea. The reality is most people don't implement or do anything with these books. It's like I've got a t-shirt at home and it says, you can't read quotes about doing push-ups and get stronger. And that's the reality. A lot of people read self-help books and then never implement any of the ideas inside of the books. And then they can always tell you the last book that they read and, how it really inspired them. And then they are off to the next thing in a matter of days or a matter of weeks. They're off to the next book. They're constantly chasing that silver bullet, constantly chasing that next thing that's going to get them to where they want to be. I can say definitively the book changed my life. Now, how do I quantify that? My business is up probably 400% over the last year. The numbers are staggering. My business has grown exponentially, not only in terms of its growth percentage-wise, but just in growth in terms of the people that I've met, the relationships that I've forged, the idea to even do a podcast and to be willing to put yourself out there, to record yourself, both video in this case and audio versions.
I was a total disaster. And now, because of this man, this morning I'm on TV in front of millions of people.
To go and set all that up, to get your podcast put onto the different platforms, iTunes, Spotify, etc. None of that would have been possible before. And so I'm going to talk a little about this book, what's important about it, and maybe some lessons that others can take from it and implement in their day-to-day lives. I think the number one thing that I would tell anyone if they said, well, what did you get out of this book? It says, get more done in 12 weeks than others do in 12 months. It was the idea that for as long as I've been in business, or as for long as I've, read books about self-help, it's talked about goal setting and planning. And most of us make our goals for 12 months, for the year. We have a year goal. The problem with a year goal is that if you start to fall off track, if you don't hit your numbers or you're not where you want to be, say you're trying to lose weight and a month in you have a event that you have to go to and you eat a little bit too much, you gain a couple of pounds, you might just fall off the rails completely and just throw in the towel and say, well, I've already messed it up now, so I'm just not even going to try anymore. I'll just try again next time. And that's how most of us live our lives. We're on a roller coaster. It's constant ups and downs. It's like we're really excited about something. We get to the top and then we come down the other side. And then, we're back to where we were before. And then we do this again. We get back to where we want to be and then we fall back down. And so the idea is to set your year up in a way in which 12-week increments, which also happen to be quarters, are your years. So you would try to accomplish your goals in quarterly segments over these 12-week periods. And if you can do that successfully, then you can get a lot done in that short 12-month period. But is it all about just taking your goals and then shrinking them into smaller periods of time and then trying to accomplish them? No, there's a lot more involved than that. The first thing that the book talks about is you have to have an emotional connection to anything you want to accomplish in life, whether it be in business, personal. You have to have an attachment to your goal, an emotional attachment. I call it your why. And if you watch some of our earlier podcasts with some of our early guests, that's a topic of conversation that came up frequently is, what is your why? Why is that so important? Because here's the reality. When you're trying to accomplish anything, you're going to face some pretty significant headwinds that are going to, try to stand in your way and keep you from reaching whatever goal you're trying to get. And the question is, will you allow those early obstacles to block you, to keep you from reaching for that next level? Or are they going to be the thing that define you? You're going to say, oh, well, I had this come up and so I just stopped doing that and I'm just going to throw in the towel. And that's what a lot of us do. The moment we encounter any type of adversity, most people will begin to make excuses and they'll begin to back off of their goals. So by establishing an emotional connection early on, a reason why you're doing the thing you're doing, that's what's going to sustain you long term, so that if and when those tough, difficult times come, you can call back on that and say, why am I even doing this in the first place? I use a lot of examples of physical fitness because I think that's an important part of our lives as well that we don't spend enough time on. I certainly am trying to get back into that currently, but didn't spend enough time on it for a long time. Watch some of those earlier episodes. I've lost about 30 pounds, I think, since some of those early episodes. You'll see the weight loss because I was so focused on my business. I was in the middle of a pandemic. I think all of us were just staying at home, not going out, probably eating a little bit too much, having a few too many beers. Next thing you know, you gain the COVID 30. So that's what happened to me. And so what has happened during the course of that period of time is, people have an obstacle in their way. They suddenly find an excuse to not push forward. Physical fitness, perfect example. It's really easy to not want to get up in the morning and go for a run, or not go to the gym in the morning and go work out. What makes you want to keep doing that day after day after day? If you have a strong emotional connection, maybe it's a vacation that you're planning to take, maybe it's an anniversary, a wedding, a reunion, something in your life. Maybe it's the doctor has given you some bad health news and said, listen, if you don't make these changes, you're not going to be here much longer. And so maybe you have children or other loved ones that you want to be here for long term. Those are all examples of things that can be a strong emotional connection. So one of the things that I did last year, and I wasn't planning to do this, but I guess I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull my phone out of my pocket, and the camera may not pick up on this, but there's a background here. And on this background there, I've got 4 photos. One is a picture of my 2 boys, and they go to a private school, and it's about making sure that they can continue to go there. One is a bunch of real estate, a bunch of houses. I want to expand into some real estate, some things I want to do there, and other parts of my career, investment properties, etc. One is a picture of me, a much skinnier version of myself when I was probably in my late 20s with my wife, a picture of a vacation home that we like to go and visit. And so that is my why. It is silly as it sounds. And trust me, I know it sounds silly, but the idea of a vision board, I'm the kind of guy, if you would have talked to me about a vision board 5 years ago, I would have laughed at it. Even like vision boards, like that works. The reality is vision boards do work. They're a constant reminder. Every time I've got my phone in my hand, I've got that constant reminder in my background as to why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And if you've studied any successful people, the late Kobe Bryant is one that comes to mind. He started every morning with meditation. He would get up, he would go, he would meditate, he would think, take time to himself and envision what his goals were, what his tasks were that he needed to accomplish for the day. I've watched some great episodes of television where they've talked about studies where they took a person, they had them shoot basketball shots for 3 weeks practicing free throw shooting, and they got decent at shooting free throws by practicing. They took another person and they just had that person visualize shooting free throws. Do you know that at the end of that 2 or 3 week period, the person that had visualized shooting free throws but hadn't actually picked up a basketball shot free throws at very close to, if not the same percentage as the person that had actually had a basketball in their hand? Now, why is that? It's because there is a very powerful connection between your mind, the mental, and the physical. There's a very powerful connection between imagining that you're able to accomplish something, thinking that you're able to accomplish something, and actually accomplishing it. If you don't have a vision and a why and a reason for what you're doing, there is a very high likelihood that at the first moment that you face any adversity, you're going to give up. So that's one of the first things the book talks about. And then, of course, it goes into throwing out the annual plan. I'm in the world of insurance, and in our world, every year we have carriers that come and they talk to us about planning for the year. What are your goals for the year? How are you going to reach them? Let's talk about what you want your numbers to look like. So we're sitting here in November, December of this year, planning what next year is going to look like and planning what we're going to do to reach those goals. And it's the same every year. It has been for as long as I've been in the business. And anyone that's in business will tell you what always happens. We're never on track by the time the fourth quarter comes. Generally, things come up, life happens, the beginning of the year, the holidays have just transpired. You want to take it easy. You want to relax. And then before you know it, it's spring. It comes about just like that. And then the next thing you know, it's summer. And before you know it, it's September. And it's the end of the third quarter. And so then what is everyone trying to do in the fourth quarter of every year? Rush, rush, rush to get done all the things that they have to get done. It happens every year in every business. And it's because we have this cycle of planning our years out over 12 months. And we think we're going to be able to accomplish all of these goals. And like I said, things come up. But you know what we say to ourselves in March when we haven't accomplished what we needed to accomplish up until that point? When we're not on track come June, what do we all say to each other? I got plenty of time though. I mean, I know I'm not where I need to be right now, but you know what? I've got 6 more months. And then come September, I got 3 more months. And then come December, I got 1 more month. And every year you feel like you're, killing yourself, which is what happens at the end of the year. Come January 1, what do we all do? We breathe a sigh of relief. We say, yes, I got through it. I got it done. You know how I'm going to reward myself? I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a few months off, bask in the glory of this success I just had. I managed to hit my goals. Yes, it was at the last minute, but I crossed the finish line and I'm going to relax. And then the vicious cycle starts all over again. And that is the problem with planning your goals out over the course of a 12-month period of time. There's too much opportunity for things there to go awry, for things to fall apart, and for you to make an excuse or to come up with a reason or a rationale to say, I'm going to get back on track next week, next month, next quarter. And then we find ourselves at the end of the year struggling to try to reach our goals. So throw out the annual plan and plan your year out 1 week at a time. If you think about it, in a 12-week year, which is what is advocated in this book, you're going to plan your year out where you're going to say, all right, week 1 of this 12-week year, that's January. Week 2 is February. Week 3 is March. Week 4 is April. That's how you're going to plan your goals. The key to this is not to plan out every single thing in the world and to give yourself so many goals and so many things that you're trying to hit that you lose focus. And this was the biggest challenge for me this past year as I implemented the processes in this book. I implemented these processes and I thought I can conquer the world. I'm killing it. Everything's working out beautifully. I'm going to have the greatest year ever. And you know what? If I just have a couple more items to track, if I just have a couple more items to do, that'll mean I'll be more successful. And that's a fallacy. The thing that you think is that I'm just going to make sure that I keep myself so busy with so many things that I'm going to achieve all of them. The problem is it's kind of like going to the Cheesecake Factory. Anybody's ever gone to the Cheesecake Factory? I look at that menu and it's analysis paralysis. I've never seen a menu that big in my entire life. I walk in, I have no idea what I want to eat. I'm like, I thought I wanted this, but now I see this menu with 700 items on it. I don't even know where to begin. And that's what happens with goal planning. The moment that you start planning your goals in such a way that you have 20 items on your list, no item becomes important. No item gets enough attention. And so you're spread too thin. Your attention is not focused. And therefore, you're going to fail to accomplish anything meaningful. Sure, you may accomplish some small short-term goals. A lot of those you're not going to accomplish. And I can speak firsthand. That was me. At the beginning of the year, I was so excited. I had read this book. I was going to implement all the policies that they had talked about. Biggest thing that they talk about is actually having these, I said policies. I'm thinking insurance, processes, these processes. How about that? We got to implement processes to help us get where we want to be. And I had so many ideas and all these, and it didn't take maybe the first 3 weeks where I realized I have bitten off more than I can chew. Just like that Cheesecake Factory menu, I have clearly put too many things on my to-do list. So that's one thing you have to guard against. And so what I would tell anyone is, if you have things that you want to accomplish for the year, break them down into manageable chunks and maybe focus on 3 items each 12-week period. Maybe there's 3 things you can focus on. And then think about it. If it's only 3 things, you can really pour your heart and soul into those 3 items. And if you do that consistently throughout the course of the year, you're going to accomplish 12 things because you could do 3 new items each and every quarter, each and every 12-week period. And it doesn't mean that you stop working on the things you were working on in the first 12 weeks, but it means that you have accomplished and gotten comfortable with that goal. You've established a process. You've implemented that process. And anybody that knows about taking on a new activity or setting a new habit, it takes time to make a habit a habit. I have gotten into a habit of running. That's another thing that came up last year. I knew that I needed to get in better shape. I knew that the pandemic had taken its toll on me physically. So I said, I'm going to get in shape. So towards the end of last year, in addition to reading this book and trying to implement all these processes, I decided I was going to do a Couch to 5K program. I was like, I need to get out there and run and get in shape. And I stayed true to it for several months. I think I started in October, and by January of 2021, I had run a 5K in my neighborhood. I don't think we had 5Ks. They hadn't come back yet. The pandemic still had everything closed, but I just went and ran in my neighborhood. And that lasted till about the time that I completed that. I may have run a handful of times after that, and then I stopped. You know why? I was trying to do way too many things. I was trying to do all of this stuff, and I didn't give myself enough time to lay the groundwork to build the processes in my business and in my personal life to allow me to really succeed. So I had to, in June 14th of this year, I had to start all over again. I said, you know what? I got to get back on this running thing. At this point, it's been a 6-month break. All the effort and all of the progress that I had made went completely out the window, and I had to start all over again. And I had people ask me, they said, well, where are you going to start? When, are you going to start week 3, week 4? Like, where are you going to start on this Couch to 5K? I said, day 1, week 1. I got to start all over again. I got to start from the beginning. Build the process. Trust the process. You know, if you were making a movie and you had to write a script, yeah, you might have an idea of what you want it to be, but you're going to have to start with, okay, let's develop these characters. Let's start at the beginning and let's develop them. Same thing with, getting in shape. You've got to be willing to swallow your pride, take a step back, start at day 1, week 1. I did that. Here we are. It's currently October of 2021. And I said that was in June. So we got June, July, August, September, October. I'm in the 5th month. I've consistently run. Last month, I ran about 70 some odd miles for the month, and I did a 5K in, I think, August and one in early September. So I've run 2 5Ks. I'm currently training for a half marathon. Never thought I'd ever run a half marathon, but I think maybe about a month ago, I ran 10 miles for the first time. Continuously ran. I mean, I've run 10 miles in a month before. I've never run 10 miles all at the same time. So that was a goal set out. It's on my vision plan, right? I've got my little vision board showing the things that I want to accomplish for the year. It was something that in the early part of the year, I tried to focus on it, right? I'd started at the end of 2020, but it fell by the wayside because it was just too much. I didn't have the time to do all of those things, and I didn't focus. Well, now that I built up the processes from the things I started doing earlier in the year, I now can fit in this new process because I've laid the groundwork. All the other things I was trying to accomplish, they are now running on autopilot. I've got those processes in place. Here's the thing you have to also do when it comes to trying to accomplish your goals. You have to confront the truth.
I want the truth.
The truth is people are inherently lazy. I'm inherently lazy. We all are. What do we all want to do? We all want to take the path of least resistance. There's a study they talk about in the book. The average person wastes 2 hours per day. You know, if you ask people why don't they accomplish their goals, their number one reason will be, I don't have enough time. I didn't have the time to get it done. It's another thing when people say I didn't have enough time. You know, sometimes the reason that we don't have enough time is because we didn't make it a priority. It's amazing how when we want to get something accomplished and we make it a priority, we always seem to find the time. But if it's not a priority, then we're not going to find the time. So, but you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be willing to accept, like, hey, the reason that I'm not accomplishing the things I want to accomplish, or the reason that I didn't get the things done I plan to get done, starts with me. I have to be the one that has to look in the mirror and realize, hey, I have a large role to play in this, and I've got to figure out ways to make myself available. One of the things they talk about in the book is planning. So we all typically, our lives rule us and not the other way around. So in other words, like you have your calendar on your phone. That's what most of us do. We're on our computers, and we go and look at our calendar, and our entire lives are based off of what our calendar says. Well, in the book, they argue you have to control your calendar. In order for you to be able to accomplish your goals, you have to control your time, which means you have to set aside time for planning.
I love it when a plan comes together.
Planning has purpose. Every Sunday, you should take time, get your planner, write out your plan for the week. What things do you need to take care of? What things do you want to accomplish? What things are a priority for you that week? And you have to do that consistently. And then if you do have time written down to accomplish a task, you need to try to accomplish it. They argue you may not accomplish every single thing that you had planned for. You may not accomplish it. But if you can at least accomplish 85% of the things that are on your to-do list, if you can do that consistently week in and week out, by the end of the year, you will be successful. You will have accomplished the vast majority of your goals if you can just hit 85%. We're not striving for perfection because perfection is not real. There are going to be things in your life that are going to come up. They're going to take time away. There's going to be family commitments. There are going to be health commitments. There are going to be, things that you have to go do that, you weren't expecting to have to do. That's fine. But at the end of the day, if you do things consistently, there will be weeks that you hit 100%. There will be weeks that you hit 50%. But if by and large, you're hitting 85% of your goals that you have laid out for yourself for each week, then over the course of that 12-week period, you're going to reach your goals. Over the course of that year, you're going to reach your goals. They talk about accountability versus ownership. You have to own these things. You have to be accountable. You have to hold yourself accountable. I'll tell you how goals typically work in the industry that I'm in. Your goal is to sell, let's say, 100 homeowners policies. How are you going to reach that goal? And that's what people write down. They'll literally write in their goal book, what's my goal, or on their little whiteboard, 100 homeowners policies. You know what the problem with that is? How are you going to achieve that? There's never any thought to how we achieve our goals. You just write them down. I'm going to lose 50 pounds. How? It seems very obvious, but we don't take the time. So let me give you an example. If you were going to lose 50 pounds, you would have to figure out, okay, well, how many calories are in a pound? 3,500 calories are in a pound. How many calories would I have to cut out in a week to lose a pound? Well, doing some basic math here, not great at math, but I'm pretty sure that's 500. So if I can cut 500 calories out each and every day, every week, I'm going to lose a pound. Over the course of a year, 52 pounds lost. That's the start of a goal. It's the start of your planning. Then you have to figure out, how are you going to cut those 500 calories out? What activities are you going to do? And those activities have to be measurable, and you have to be able to track them. And so in my business, I developed a series of goals, a series of things that I wanted to accomplish. And then it came to, how are we going to do that? And what are the activities we're going to put into place? And that's where the fun begins, because then you get to test these things over the course of your 12-week years, right? I'm so lucky. I get 4 years in every year. I get 4 12-week periods, 4 years in 1 year. Can you believe that? It's crazy. 4 different years in 1 year. So guess what happens at the end of 12 weeks if I didn't accomplish something or something didn't work? I get to tweak it, change how I'm tracking that goal, change the activities that we're doing to try to reach that goal, and then try it again for another 12 weeks and see if we see improvement. See if we see a change from that year to the next year. If I was tracking my goals on a linear 12-month period, it may not be to the end of the year that I realize, you know what, we didn't hit our goal in this area for the year. You know why we didn't hit it? Because I didn't realize until October that what I was doing wasn't working. I wasn't tracking it. That's another problem. Most people don't track their goals. That's why such great things in the fitness world. You have Under Armour has, MyFitnessPal, right? I have a Garmin watch on. It tracks how far I run, how many steps I take, what my heart rate has been. I can go pull charts up on my smartphone. Anything that makes your goals trackable and measurable are super important. And that's one of the things I learned from this book, was to make all of my goals trackable and measurable. You have the top line goal, but then you have to have the pieces underneath of it that you track and measure. And those things lead to the end result. That's the thing. We all are trying to achieve an end result. Stop focusing on the 50 pounds of weight loss. Focus on the daily activity. I know that if I go and run a 5K each day, I'm going to burn roughly 500 calories. At my size, if I go and do that, I'm going to burn about 500 calories. I just go run 3 miles. So if my goal was to just lose weight and I didn't want to change anything about my lifestyle, I wanted to keep eating the same things that I was eating and enjoying the same alcoholic beverages that I enjoy, I could go out and run a 5K every day. And if I did that, I would have the same net result. If I want to speed that process up, in that case, I'm going to have to maybe cut back in some other areas or find some other life changes to make. But that's where the goals really take effect, is in the day-to-day implementation. I had a goal in my office that I wanted to write more policies of a certain type this year. One of those was life insurance. We wanted to make sure we offered our clients life insurance. And so I challenged my staff to ask about that more frequently, to ask clients more frequently about that type of coverage and whether or not they had it already, and if we could help them with it and maybe give them a price on it, see if we could, offer them some coverage that maybe we hadn't offered them in the past. Because the reason we didn't have a lot of clients taking out life insurance in the past was not because we were, doing anything wrong. It's that we just weren't simply asking. It's amazing what you do when you just ask. And then what did I do as an owner of a business? I would ask my staff, well, how many people did you ask today? And we made a little list. I asked 3 people today about life insurance. And so how many is that at the end of the week? 5 days in a week, that's 15 people asked. How many people is that over the course of a week, over a month, over a year, to see how this works? That little change of asking that simple question can have very big results over the long term. In the short term, you may not see all the success. You may not see that goal reached in the first few weeks, in the first few months. But over the course of a year, chances are you're going to see a vast change. I think the other thing that I would say is important, besides coming up with processes that you are going to follow and looking at how to best reach those goals, is always making sure that you are giving yourself the time needed to track those goals, to measure those goals, and to prepare for those goals. One thing they talk about in the book is taking time each week to yourself to do strategic planning, to actually go and do something that's outside of what you would normally do, to set aside maybe an hour, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, maybe an afternoon. Go out and do not think about whatever the task at hand is. Allow your mind to have some freedom, because it's very hard to come up with new ideas. It's very hard to come up with solutions, because sometimes we're so close to the problem, we can't see the solution right in front of our faces because we're just too involved. Sometimes some of the greatest ideas come to us when we're not in the midst of our business. Sometimes it's when we're sleeping, in our dreams. Sometimes it's on the golf course. It may be when I'm out for a run. It may be when you're out for a drive. Sometimes that's when things hit you and you start to realize, oh, well, now I've got some great ideas because I've stepped away from this endeavor that's taking up so much of my time, and I've allowed my brain to actually be creative. It is very hard to be creative in the moment when you're so focused in on what you've got to get done in the moment. When you've got to figure out, how do I take care of this problem for this customer at this moment? Or how do I take care of this issue at home at this moment? Or how do I make sure that we get dinner on the stove at this moment? When you're in that every day, how in the world are you going to possibly think of creative ideas to find new and inventive ways to reach your goals? You can't. You're too close to it. You got to take a step back. So I think the thing that I would try to impart on any of the listeners that are listening to this podcast or those that are viewing it is, I can talk about these items because I've experienced them firsthand. I utilized what was in this book. It's a very easy read, The 12-Week Year. I've actually bought copies of this book and handed it out to friends, handed it out to business associates, other people. I bought a whole box of them. I'm not sure how many I have left, but it made such an impact on my life that I started handing it out to people. And I'm sure there are people that I've given copies to that have never cracked it open. And if you're listening to this episode and I've given you a copy of this book, please open it and please read it. But it sounds very narcissistic to sit here and talk about this. And the question then becomes, well, why should I listen to you? Why should I take advice? What have you done? What have you accomplished? And the reason I would tell you is because I've been in business for 12 years. And I can tell you for 12 years, I've done things all sorts of different ways. I've tried different platforms, different processes. The process that most people in business take is they just do what they can do to stay afloat, and they do what they can do to keep their head above water. And I've done that as well. And it worked. I had success. That's why I stayed in business, but I didn't have the level of success and the type of success that I've had since I started implementing the processes that are here. So just to kind of go over some of the things that I've had happen in my life in the last 12 months, our office has won 2 awards from our customers. The Roanoke magazine has a Best of award, and we won gold in the category of Best Insurance Agency and Best Insurance Agent. It wasn't something that I'd ever even thought about or contemplated trying to achieve before. I'd never reached out to any of my customers and said, hey, will you please vote for our agency for this award? You have to kind of get it in your head that you're willing to put yourself out there to your customers and ask them to kind of reflect on you and to rate you. And we decided that, you know what, this is the year we need to do that. And so we did, and we were just amazed with the response that we received. And we had our customers vote for us, and record numbers. And so something that we had never tried to achieve before, we managed to achieve. And so that was really, really amazing. Had the same thing happen at the end of last year when I first started going through this process with the Roanoke Times. They had a best of local awards, and we won gold in that category. Well, those are really awesome accomplishments. But even more amazing than that is what we've accomplished on the business front. With one of the largest insurance carriers in our office, we are ranked number 16 in the company currently for personal lines production and profitability. I never thought in a million years that out of a company of some 2,700 agents, I think there are, that our agency would be ranked in the top 20. And that's all because of the processes we put in place and the goals and things that we set out to achieve this year that happened. I managed at the end of last year to win an award through one of my carriers. There's a picture of my staff and I holding a plaque. It was a branch recognition meeting award for goals that we had set, short-term goals we had set, and we had come out on top against every agency of a similar size to ours. And I never thought that we would ever achieve that. And then there's a contest that happened this year that I don't know what the results of that contest are going to be just yet. I don't know because they haven't announced them, but I know we did very well. And I'm hoping that we won. But if we didn't win, that's okay too. We gave it our best. I think most people are held back by their own visions of what they think are possible. And I can certainly speak to that. And so what makes me an expert on success? I'm not an expert on success. I'm an expert on failure. I'm an expert on what not to do. And I learned by reading this book and implementing the processes, and not just this, there are other books as well, but this was kind of the genesis. This was the catalyst that led me down this path. And so that's why I wanted to share this on today's episode. But the problem with most people is that they cannot envision the goal. And if you cannot envision a goal and you cannot see yourself accomplishing it and achieving it, you will not achieve it. There are countless stories. I'll never forget the story of Jim Carrey writing himself a check for $1 million early on and putting it in his wallet. This is before he had ever been on Mad TV or made Ace Ventura or any of his movies. And he put that in his wallet. And guess what? He managed to one day cash that check. And
Alrighty then.
there are countless stories of people who have done that. The reason that most people only make it partially to the goal that they have set for themselves is because they just lack belief that it's possible. They just lack that belief that they can achieve it. And all I'm saying is I woke up one day, read this book, talked about it with some of my peers, really tried to implement the processes that it talks about and tried to come up with plans for how to achieve my goals based on this skeleton that they kind of lay out. And can you believe it? I started to achieve a bunch of goals that I never thought were possible. And it's because I started to believe they were possible. And if you study anything about psychology and world-class athletes and world-class business leaders, you will discover that the majority of those people have a firm belief in what they're trying to achieve. Other people may doubt them. Other people may believe that they're, crazy. But they believe in what they believe in, and they have actually envisioned it. They have actually seen it in their mind's eye. That period of time where I talked about having an emotional connection and developing a goal, they spent a lot of time thinking very strongly about that. And then imagining themselves having the success that they had. And then they achieved that success. And so that's what I want people to take away from today's episode. I want you to, if you haven't picked up the book, The 12-Week Year, I encourage you to pick up a copy. I encourage you to read it. It is a very, very easy read. Looking here, let's see, this book is a very, very, long 188 pages. I mean, literally, you can read this in a weekend. You can read this on a Saturday. Read the book and then go back and reread it. Start to implement the processes that it talks about. Think hard about it. It's one of those books that you can't just read it. You have to start to think about it, ruminate on it. Take time with it. Kind of just let it settle and then think, what would my life look like if I started to do these things? And I did that. And I've had more success in the last 12 months than I've had in the last 12 years. And I didn't know how I was going to feel about recording a podcast episode about that because, like I said, it sounds preachy. It sounds narcissistic. It sounds like I'm talking about myself, and I do not like to feel that way when I'm talking on a podcast episode. I don't want to feel like I'm preaching, but I had other people that have heard me tell this story and they encouraged me and said, this is really a topic that you should spend some time on. You should talk to your listeners about. And that's what the Can't Deposit Excuses podcast is all about. I want to bring ideas to my listeners and things that they may not have come across before, open up a new window, a new doorway for them to take the baton and run with it and learn more. So I would encourage you, to take a look at this book, implement the processes that it describes in your own life. It is now the fourth quarter of 2021. This is around the same time that last year I was reading this book. And I know that it's what set me up to have a fantastic 2021 in my business and in my personal life. And I've had to obviously adjust and shift. You don't get it right the first time. Like I said, I bit off more than I could chew at the beginning. And I also spent a lot of time on my business at the beginning and let my health and my physical health, take a back seat. And I had to recommit to that in June, like I said. But I encourage you to read this now, start looking at this in the fourth quarter of this year, and it will set you up potentially to have a wonderful, wonderful 2022. And that's why I am sharing this story, because I want you guys to have the same level of success that I've had, have the same relationships built that I've had built over the last year. The people that have come into my life, the business relationships that have come into my life have been fantastic, and I want to share that with others. So I hope you guys have a great one. Please, once again, like and subscribe to the channel if you're listening to us on YouTube, and we will catch you on the next episode. So thanks again, guys. Talk to you soon.